Hi, I'm Maggie from maggiescrochet.com, and in this video I'm going to show you one of these wonderful scarves that you see here. They're arm knitted, and I'm wearing one that I made with 2 strands of Lion Brand, so that's in a separate Lion Brand Wool Ease Thick and Quick, and that's in a separate video. This one is Premier Yarns Saturate Yarn, 3 strands, but then I tell you in the video how you could actually do this with 2 strands. This one is 3 strands, no, it's 4 strands actually, of Lion Brand homespun yarn. And I think you could actually use 3 strands of this and have this come out, you know, kind of drapey like the typical ones. This one is a little bit full, but some people really like them that way, so it all depends. And one of the reasons why I do so many different ones is because that'll give you a good idea what these are going to look like finished. And I like the way the colors changed in this one, and I love the way the texture of this one. And this one was actually done with Premier Yarns Starbella, which is typically a netting yarn that you use for ruffled scarves. And this was done with Deborah Norville Serenity Chunky Yarn, 3 strands. And this was done with Starbella Luxe yarn, which is also typically a netting yarn. And this one, I went crazy with all different kinds of yarn. And I used Eversoft, like 4 strands. And then I used Enchant. We used 3 strands of that. And actually there's 4 strands of City Life. So I just wanted to see what that would look like, and I thought the red was great to mix with the City Life, and it brought out the metallic in the yarns. So the possibilities are endless, and I'll go to close up now and I'll show you how to arm knit a scarf. Hi, I'm Maggie from maggiescrochet.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to arm knit with Premier Yarns Starbella Luxe yarn. And this is a great yarn. It has a little alpaca edge on it. You can see that right here. And this is typically used to make the ruffled scarves because it's got the netting on the side. But I'm going to use it to arm knit a scarf, and I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I kind of think it's going to look great. So I'm pulling from the center of 2 skeins, and I've measured off 2 yards for my long tail because I'm going to do what's called a long tail cast on. And that's knitting terminology. So I want my cast on yarn over here, right here, and then the other yarn is going to be my working yarn. So right at the 2 yard mark, I'm going to take both strands and I'm going to make a slip knot. And there's several ways to make a slip knot, but this is how I make mine. And when I make a loop in that top strand, I cross across the back, and then I pull the strand forward out of that circle like this, and you'll notice there's a knot side and a slip side, and then I pull on the knot side, and then I open up the slip side like this to get it up on my hand. So this is going to count as your first cast on stitch here, and then to do the remaining stitches, all you do is go between them like this, you pull up, and then you have 2 strands like this. You go on this side of this strand, and then just reach over and grab the other loop like this, and let this loop drop down. Let me straighten that out. So you've got a new loop created, and that goes up on your arm like that. And then you go underneath and you tighten it, but you don't want to tighten it too tight, because you want to be able to get these loops off your hand, especially if you needed to get them off your hand. You want them to be able to come off. So anyway, you go like this, lift up, you see the 2 loops, you go over here and grab it. You have to grab it from the side, and then reach over and grab the other loop like that. Let this loop drop down and put the new loop up on your arm, and then tighten. You'll be tightening after every single stitch. So now go up here, pull this up, go on this side, and then reach over and grab that loop and bring it up here. So I'm just going to cast on 5 stitches so that we have enough to make a long scarf with this, or a cowl. So you just lift up like this, go on this side, reach over and grab this loop and put the new loop up on your hook, on your arm, not your hook. I'm used to crochet. Okay, so this is the rest of the long tail, and I had leftover from the 2 yards. So I'm not going to be using that anymore. And then these are the 5 stitches on my arm. So now to start row 1, I will be working with my working yarn from now on. And all I do is hold this here and then pull this loop off like this, and it just drops. And then you take the new loop and you put it on the opposite hand, and then you tighten. And then this goes back in here. You take this loop, move it onto the working yarn like this. Now you have a new loop. This drops down, and you put the new loop over here and you tighten. And then you hold on to this. You move this one off like that. Drop this one, move the new loop up here. Hold on to this, move this loop off. Drop this loop, move the new loop over here. Hold on to this, move this last loop off, let that drop, take the new loop and put it up on your arm and tighten. Okay, so that created row 1, and if you pull it out you can see the little V's. Okay, now to create row 2, all you do is hold on to this, move this loop off, new loop goes over here and tighten. Move this loop over here, put the new loop over here. Let me get rid of this long tail. Okay, so yarn over here, move this loop off, the new loop goes over here. Yarn back in this hand, move this loop off, take the new loop and move it over here. Hold on to this, take the last loop, take the new loop, goes over here and tighten. Okay, so now if you pull this out, you'll see row 2 is complete, and you'll see 2 rows of ovals. So now you just keep going back and forth, pull this off, go over here, tighten, back in this hand, pull this over, new loops, tighten, over here, go like this, tighten, over here, move it over here, tighten, over here. Okay. So that's the end of row 3, and you just keep going until you get down to the end, and make sure when you get down to the end you leave 2 yards of yarn, or maybe about 1.5 yards you can get away with. And then when you get to that point, stop, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish this scarf, and I'll come back on camera and I'll finish off, I'll bind off and show you how to sew the ends together. I'm ready to bind off my Starbella Luxe scarf, and this is what it looks like upon completion. And I picked the right amount of stitches to do, because you'll be able to wrap this cowl around one time. And you could also fringe the ends and make a scarf out of it. But you'd have to have extra yarn for that, so you'd probably have to go into another skein or make this shorter and stop so that you have strands to make fringe with. So to bind off, It doesn't matter which arm you land up on, but you hold the strand here and you knit off 2 stitches like you did for the rest of the scarf, and you tighten, and then move this over here and tighten. And then when you have 2 stitches on the opposite hand, you just move the previous one over the new one and let it drop, and that's a bound off stitch right there. So then you knit 1 more stitch off like this, and then you take the previous loop and drop it off over the new loop and tighten. Then you take this strand, you knit another one, and then you lift the previous one over the new one, and then you hold this, knit this one off, tighten, drop the previous one off the new one, and that's it. Okay, so when you have 1 loop left, you cut this to about maybe 18 inches. I'm just going to leave it as long as it is. And all you do is pull this last strand all the way out through the last loop like that. And then you pull it tight like this, not too tight, but that kind of locks it and it won't come undone. So if you'll notice on this edge, it's like I've got all the little bound off stitches right there. So then if you were going to fringe this, you would take and wrap this yarn around maybe a 6-inch piece of cardboard or 8 inches like this. You would, if you had your strands like this, then you would take and go, this could be 1 strand of fringe like this. This is the right side of your scarf where the little ovals are, and then this is the wrong side where the bars are like that. So on this side, you just take a very large crochet hook and you bring the hook from the back to the front, and you take your strand. I think you'd only need 1 strand for this because this is pretty thick. Let me see here. Okay, let me get the scissors out of the way. Okay, so you take 1 strand. I don't think that was meant to be my strand here. Alright, I think it's this one. Okay, so you take the 1 strand and you fold it in half, you put the folded side on your hook, and you bring that from the front to the back, and then bring it there, then take the 2 strands of the fringe, and then bring those through the folded side and pull them all the way through. And that way you have this little bar on the right side. So you do that all the way across. So, if you wanted to sew this together as a cowl, you need to make sure that all of the stitches are facing the right way. So all of these stitches that have, you see all the little ovals, you want it all flattened out exactly the same way. So then you're going to match up your cast on stitches, which are right here, to your bind off stitches, which are right here. But you want to go on the wrong side of this. This is the right side. This is the side that was facing you the entire time you were arm knitting. So you want to go flip this over to the wrong side, and just with your hand you can do this, or you can take a huge safety pin and do it. Sometimes the ends land up opposite each other, but in this case they landed up facing each other. So I just take, when that happens, I just take this and start out with a little knot. And you don't want to pull anything like super tight because it'll just pull everything and gather it. So I would sew it like this, and then by hand all you got to do is take a wad of strands from each side, put them together, and then run this through underneath it. And get this out of there. Okay, so like that, and just run it across. There's only 5 stitches, so it won't take that long to do it. So when you get up here to the end, it's right here, Just go like this. You could do a knot like, instead of pulling the strand all the way through, let it stay up like this and bring the end through there. And then you could wrap it around that strand again and bring it through something like this so that you have kind of a knot there. And then just finish weaving in your ends, but that's how you connect it. So this is a long enough cowl to wear just once around your neck, or you can wrap it a second time. So that's how you make a arm knitted cowl using Starbella Luxe yarn. And I hope that you enjoyed this video, and make sure that you watch all the other arm knitting videos and tips that we have available on the Maggie Weldon channel. Thank you very much for watching. So I hope that you enjoyed your arm knitting lesson. If you have any questions or comments, just write them below, and please subscribe to our channel, and make sure that you watch all of our tips and all of the other arm knitting scarves and Afghan videos. Thank you very much for watching. Back over here, and I'm going to knit off one more stitch like this, put it over here, tighten over the whole strand of yarn, and then pull that strand of yarn all the way through. And then just for extra security,